Urlakut, tungasugitsi ilunasi, haisi mayusi. Welcome everybody and good morning. Elders, Elder Claudette Comanda, thank you for your prayer. Survivors, Truth and Reconciliation Commissioner, Dr. Willie Littlechild. We just had a little chat in the back and we both said, we've been at this for a long time and we're still here. Welcome to our Indigenous leaders, Nathan, Obed, ministers, dignitaries, and our youth. Chers invités, bonjour.
Dear guests, good day.
I am thankful for the welcome and teachings the elders of this unceded territory are sharing with us today and every time we gather on these lands. So thank you. Taganigiyami hubiasupunga inu hatikanita ko hatta sungalo amalu asingin na hakasi mayunik ta na ilitak siya utigilak tanga ilinyak si mayubini pimmageo lamatamani nunatini ilaw hattatut ilunatik huyak na mayktaka. I'm grateful to be here with all of you today to mark the 3rd National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, a day of reflection and action. Je suis honorée d'être ici avec
It's an honor for me to be here with you today.
I had so many emotions going through me when I was watching the memorial cloth banner. It's a visual impact of how many kids actually didn't come back home. So, what stories do we want to tell our children? This is, of course, the history of Canada, as told for the longest time, of explorers and discoveries, of taming a wild land, of settlements and confederation. But as time has passed, Canadians have come to realize that this version of history is not complete. Canada's history is so much more than that. It should reflect Indigenous histories. Certainly, our national history needs to reflect the challenges, trauma, joys, experiences, knowledge, and culture of Indigenous peoples and lives. For years, Indigenous people have been telling their stories. I am here to tell you today, Canada as a country is beginning to listen to those stories. And as you know, many of those stories have been devastating. We are gathered today to remember those stories, the stories of children taken from their homes, not just from their homes, but from their families and loved ones. The stories of the children represented in the shoes we see today on stage. Every shoe here honors the survivors of residential schools. Every shoe here commemorates the children who never made it back to their families. And for some that came home, never saw their parents again because they had passed on while they were away. These children who lie in unmarked graves across this country were never forgotten by their families nor their communities. And of course, we have the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report that has calls to action and I know people are working on those calls to action, but I just wanted to say that in addition to these reports, including missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, the unmarked graves of the children woke this country up. So I often get asked to define reconciliation. Reconciliation is a complex issue. It's complex because survivors have their own experiences and need to heal in their own time. Reconciliation is complex because there are many levels of work that is required, both at the community, within the country, across, and at the political level. C'est quoi la réconciliation?
That's why the reconciliation is not one answer and not an easy answer.
Pour moi,
But for me,
la réconciliation,
reconciliation
c'est simplement le respect.
is simply respect.
Reconciliation is a way of seeing and living life. It is about being intentional in how we interact with one another, how we show respect, how we get rid of racism, how we make space to respect each other and our cultures. It means equality in the country for all, especially Indigenous people who have suffered immeasurably without the type of services that we in other parts of the country take for granted. It's a time to get to know each other. It's a time to tell our stories, a time to exchange and tell each other who we are, so that in the end, we will learn as a people of this country to be the type of people we want to be. The power of education is powerful. Truth is powerful. So when we talk about reconciliation, we want the education system to embrace and teach the Indigenous history and our lives, and also to support our Indigenous languages. Education isn't just about the academic side. Education is about our way of teaching as well, Indigenous ways of teaching. And that needs to be addressed also in our education system. And I know that it's happening in different parts of the country, so I'm not saying that it isn't happening, but we need a more unified system of how we give the full story of Canada, especially in relation to Indigenous and First Peoples of this country. I have been traveling quite a lot since I became Governor General over 2 years now, and I am seeing every day how complex it is, what is confronting us as a country, how complex it is. And when I travel across the country, I don't just stay in the city and meet with government representatives. I also go out to remote areas and communities to talk to them about their issues and their concerns and how they see reconciliation. And I've been recently to a place in Nova Scotia where there was a house that provided support and services to young people. And they deal with their trauma and their healing through art. So this is one of the things that is also important in our country. So yesterday, when I hosted an event at Rideau Hall, where we had a wonderful Indigenous artist, Meryl McMaster, she showed all the students that were there how to use art to learn more about the full history of our country and to share their hopes and dreams for a world where every child matters. Reconciliation is hope. Hope that we are building together a future that is free from racism, harm, prejudices, exclusion, and violence and injustices. Everything that has marked the lives of Indigenous people for centuries. But we must also remember how Indigenous people are working not only through their well-being, but we Indigenous people are also working with non-Indigenous Canadians. They're developing partnerships, building better communications, and better communities. It takes a long time for these things, and I understand and fully sympathize with those that are at home in small communities are continuing to suffer the inequities. Services that we have, health services, mental health support, education that's relevant to their culture and language. And I think that it's really important to remember that even though we are making progress on bigger issues, it's not necessarily having an impact at the community level. So I think we must think more about how we as leaders agree on things that we should also think about. So how is that going to impact people at the community level? So on this National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, let us all go forward with hope. And ayuinata. Ayuinata in my language, in Inuktitut, means never give up, no matter what. Let us go forward with the children in our hearts and minds. Let us support the families. And let us walk this journey of reconciliation together, one step at a time. Marchons ensemble sur le chemin de la réconciliation.
Let's walk together on the path of reconciliation, one step at a time.
Thank you so much for having me today. I am with you. Thank you.